What about mutual responsibility? Now, I think, would you say there's a general consensus that we have a responsibility to each other?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the question really is, how far does that responsibility go? Is that, and actually really where it breaks down, you know, we'll have different people, different opinions. And we're going to discover that Torah has a very broad definition of how far it goes. And it's not just a nice thing to look out for each other and responsibility to each other. We actually have a legal requirement within Judaism, Torah law, to act, we're responsible one for each other. Okay, so the way it's going to go is we're going to start off with 3 case studies, and then we're going to unpack them. Okay, first case study is a episode that happened in the States, 2015. We're on page 76. I'll tell you outside. Basically, there's a fellow by the name of Dylan Roof, bad guy. Unfortunately, America suffers from too many mass shootings. So this guy goes into an African American church and shoots up the church, killing 9 people. The FBI starts their investigation after the attack, and it discovers that this guy, Dylan Roof, had a friend, and his friend's name was Joseph Meek Jr. And Joseph Meek, a couple of nights before this episode happened, they had a night of drinking and drug use, etc. And this Dylan tells him, "This is what I plan to do. I plan to go and kill people in this church." And Dylan was concerned about it, so he actually went and hid his gun. So he shouldn't. And at some point, he put the gun back. But initially, when the FBI approached this Joseph Meek and they asked him, and he says, "I didn't know anything about it." He completely denied it. Later, it turned out that he was actually lying, and he did know about this. However, this Joseph Meek knew about it. He didn't inform the authorities. He didn't do anything about it. Legally, they said he is not responsible at all. They can't hold him responsible at all for not having reported this. The only thing that this Joseph was indicted on, he was sentenced to 27 months in prison for having lied to the FBI, initially saying that he didn't know, and when he actually did know about it. That was a crime, lying to the FBI. But the actual act of not having reported the knowledge that his friend is about to go shoot up a church, there wasn't a conviction, because that legally he wasn't required to do. Now, question is, do you think that should be a legal imperative? Should one be required to report on a crime when they know a crime is going to happen? Should they be required to report? What do you think?
Crime like that, and there's potentially loss of people's lives.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And lesser crime?
Debatable.
Okay, interesting. So you would say it would be a legal requirement?
Yes.
Interesting. So, okay. It really breaks down, you would say there's you could say it's a legal obligation. And the judge said there wasn't a legal obligation. Absolutely morally, you failed, telling this Joseph he had a moral obligation to do it, but not a legal obligation. And a lot of people, I agree with you, would say that this should be a legal obligation. The next level would be, it's a moral imperative. You're morally obligated to do it. You might not be legally, but you're morally obligated to do it. I don't think anyone's going to say it's just a nice thing to do if you do that, commendable, well done. That's something you really should be doing. Okay, yeah, first case study. Next case study. Next case study is Rachel, page 78. Rachel's going down the street, and she sees a shop that's closed for the night. And she notices that the air conditioner is still running. So she realizes, oops, the store owner forgot to shut his air conditioner before he closed up shop. Now, she can start trying to track down the owner and let him know that his air conditioner is running and it's costing him money. Does she need to do that? Does she have any responsibility towards this shopkeeper to save him on the finances that he's losing? Should she have to hassle? What do you think? Should such a thing be legally required?
Legally not.
Legally not.
Fund is not the same as loss of lives.
Yeah.
So legally, I wouldn't require her to be obligated to report, but yeah, morally, I would expect her to at least try.
Morally imperative, you would say. And like she should be, okay, yeah. Or not just commendable, not just okay. What do you say?
Well, from the outside, it seems to be a minor thing,
right?
Like paying.
How much is it already?
Like 1/3 yes, of your electricity bill will be paid extra per month. So it seems to be a minor thing,
right?
Comparable to the other case. So
compared to the other case, for sure, right? There's loss of life, and here is okay.
Yeah, here the loss of a few pounds maybe or something.
Good.
Of course, it would be nice morally if you reported it, but more or less we're trying to be rational. And if I reported everything I see on the street, which is undue or something, I could spend all my day calling people that, hey, you're doing this and this wrong. So for me personally, it wouldn't worth effort because it's such a minor thing initially.
Okay, good. So since you feel that, and rightly so, that's a minor thing. How much do I need to start driving myself crazy? How much do I need to start schlepping around town, like you said, to start figuring out who it is? Oh, okay, if I really want to be an extra sweet guy, I'll do that. Okay, fine. Third case. Third case is case study, which is, take a look at this figure 3.1, page 80. Now this is some results from Pew Research Center. I don't know if you've heard of them. In the States, they do a lot of research, not only Jewish research, they do all kinds of research. And one of the things is they look at the Jewish community. And this is some of what the outcome of what they've discovered in looking at the Jewish community. So you're looking at age groups, okay? How many Jews say they're Jews by religion, and how many Jews say they're Jews of no religion? Which means that they're Jewish in their identity, but they don't have a religion. They don't have Judaism as their religion. And you'll just look as it goes down, 65, 50, the percentage goes up and up and up. So 18 to 29-year-olds are really disengaged with their Judaism in a big way. And it just shows that the younger demographic is very much, they might say that they're Jewish, but they really aren't very aware of what being Jewish means even. And because of that, they don't even identify with what it means to be Jewish. They say they have no religion. By culturally, they're Jewish. By descent, they might be Jewish, but they don't really connect with that identity. Now, you obviously, just thinking about the practical point, that means that if they're going to bring up their children, and you have some graphs on that, then it's just going to get, the situation is going to get worse. You're bringing up your children like that. You consider yourself a Jew with no religion. The chances that your kids are going to even identify as being Jewish is also going to go down. So that's really what's happened. And it's a very sorry state, I would say. These studies are pretty depressing because it's really giving a pretty bleak look at the state of Jewish identity and Jewish involvement within Jewish life in the States in a big way. So the question is really on this discussion is what should we do to reverse the trend of Jewish identity? And is someone else's degree of religious observance or Jewish identity any business of ours? Would you say so?
Can you repeat?
Should we be, what can we do to, is this any of our business? Put it this way, mutual responsibility. We're talking about I have a responsibility. Do we have a responsibility to other people who may be Jewish, just like us, and to encourage them to be more in touch with what their identity stands for? You're seeing a situation like this. So do these numbers, would these numbers bother you? Do they bother you? I assume you're here because you want to discover more about what it means to be Jewish, right? There's a lot of people out there who have no clue what, and looking at Jewish continuity, which is always an important question. What is the future of Jewish life? And when you see so many people who are totally disengaged, which is a relatively new phenomenon, because 100, 200 years ago, it wasn't the same. That's pretty troubling. So, what does the future of Jewish life look like? So what can we do to solve that situation? And secondly, is it any of our business altogether? Maybe, okay, they're not interested. It's their business. We're not gonna, do we have a responsibility to, and if we have a responsibility, at what level would you say we have? I don't know. Who has that responsibility? What would you say?
Interesting question. I think it's a little more subjective. If like if I know someone is about to kill someone, it's very clear that I need to report that. If I know someone is about to steal or someone else is about to lose money, like if you see someone that left the AC on in his store, I know that it's very definitive. There's no doubt he's going to lose funds.
Right.
But here, I think that they are missing out on their Jewish identity, but they might think otherwise. So I cannot be obligated to do something about it and enhance their connection to their Jewish identity because they might think otherwise. No one could think otherwise that someone would lose funds or lose their lives.
Okay.
That's very definitive.
Good.
Here, it's my interpretation.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's a nice synopsis of it. Yeah. What would you say? You agree?
I think for your children or your family or your nuclear family, you're definitely responsible. How you bring up your children or how you stand with your partner on religious affairs. But I don't think that influencing other people on whether to live a religious life or not is right, because so I don't think that the quantity of people of a certain faith is what counts. It's rather the quality, I think, whether they're really intentionally living religious lives. And so I wouldn't influence anyone. I wouldn't persuade anyone to live a religious life, because I don't think it would make a good quality of a religious person.
Interesting. Okay. So would you say at a communal level there's maybe some responsibility? Meaning to say you're looking at a situation within the entire Jewish world that why are people disengaged? Partly because they haven't had the opportunity to be engaged. They didn't grow up with that. They completely have never been exposed to what Judaism even has to offer. So they're going to go study Zen Buddhism because that seems they're looking for some enrichment in their life. Let's go to Buddhism. But to even explore Judaism, many people haven't even had a chance. So maybe so is there any responsibility at any level to say, hey, this is your heritage. Look at it, inquire about it, let's discover it. Of course, no one's going to make decisions for you. Everyone's got entitled to make their own decisions, but is there any kind of responsibility, maybe at a communal level, maybe even at a personal level, interesting, to say, I have had that privilege of I connected with this identity, which I know gives me so much. This person didn't. Maybe I should, it's my duty to also introduce them to, it's their choice how they're going to deal with that, of course. But is there should I feel obligated, or is it a nice thing to do? Is it a legal thing to do? Interesting concept. Okay, so we've got really 3 case studies. Hi, Amy. You're not seeing Nathaniel and Hannah sitting at the table. Hannah, right?
Yes.
You say that age, okay? But they're here, and good to see you. Okay. Chime in whenever you Lubov, chime in whenever you would like. So far, Amy, let me just catch you up. We put down 3 case studies. We started lesson 3, so you can just catch them up quickly. Page 76. 3 case studies, really trying to get a good grip on what is the Jewish take on mutual responsibility. How far does that go? And depending on different situations, when would we apply it? Is mutual responsibility something we have a responsibility to others? Is that something that at a level of, is that something nice to do? Is that something which we actually are morally obligated to do? Or is it something where maybe is even a legal responsibility towards each other? Okay, that's where we're at. Now, let's take a look, and what we're going to discover is what's the Torah's take on this. It's in the Torah, this is a big and important one. We have an enormous amount of mutual responsibility towards each other. And that actually takes us back to the holiday we just celebrated, holiday of Shavuot. So here the Jewish people, page 83, are receiving the Torah. And as they're about to receive the Torah, the people all responded in unison, we will do everything God has said. And the Medrash tells us, page 84, when the Jewish people accepted God's rule at Mount Sinai, they did so joyfully, as one. As the verse states, the people all responded in unison. In doing so, they even committed to serving as guarantors for each other. Okay, so what's a guarantor? A guarantors for each other. What's a guarantor? Nathaniel, you want to loan me money, right? You're not sure that I'm going to pay you back. So comes along Hannah and says, I'll guarantor the loan. I trust Rabbi. You're going to get your money. And if he doesn't pay you, I'm covering it. That's a guarantor, right? So the Jewish people take upon themselves to the guarantor for each other, which means that they are responsible for each other. Now, which is an interesting concept. Here they are receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai. Usually we think about the experience of receiving the Torah. It's a pact between who and who? The Jewish people and God. But the Jewish people don't just say that that's where it ends. They say this pact is something we're actually mutually responsible for each other about. So we also are going to take it upon ourselves, and there's a concept which becomes a Torah concept that we have a responsibility to do our best to protect a Jewish person from transgressing maybe their laws in between them and God, as also their interpersonal things. If someone is gonna hurt someone else, there's a mutual responsibility in Judaism. It's called Kol Israel Arevim Zelazeh. Now, everything we're saying here is in the context of Jewish law. So therefore, we're talking the text you'll all see are talking about Jewish people. But that's just because Jewish law is talking to Jewish people. The same way American law would be talking to American people, and UK law would be talking to UK people. But this is a Torah idea. People are responsible one for the next. And therefore, that responsibility goes to ideas such as between man and God and between man and man. We have responsibility to each other. Okay? That becomes a very core principle. Now, how does that play out? How far does that go? What's the basis of that understanding? Why should we be responsible one for each other? What's that all about? So let's take a look at 85. This is a classic mashal, a classic parable for the idea. Okay. Hannah, you want to read for us 85?
All Jews are mutually responsible. This can be compared to a ship where a hole has been ruptured in one of its cabins. We do not explain a cabin has ruptured, rather we say the entire ship is ruptured.
Okay. So this is the Medrash giving a parable to understand this idea, right? Let's take it step by step. To say, generally speaking, if someone wants to harm me, no one needs to tell you that you can defend yourself. It's intuitive. Your responsibility is to protect yourself, right? But as soon as it comes to, let's say, someone harming someone else, so it's if someone's going to harm someone else, it's accepted that society has a responsibility to protect people, that they shouldn't harm each other. If I see someone, if someone's going to harm someone else, then society is going to step in and say, no, you can't harm someone else, right? So about harming myself, obvious. Harming someone else, society has accepted that we have a responsibility. If the government's going to step in, or at least we have a moral responsibility. Someone can't just go and harm someone else. We have a responsibility to step in. And when it comes to personal conduct, is someone else's personal conduct any of my business? So secular society, absolutely not. It's his business, I stick out of it. Yeah, fair to say?
Fair enough.
Fair enough. What? Okay, so then you find, let's say, people you said before about family, let's say.
Yes.
Family. So that's interesting. So let's say if I see a relative kind of doing things which aren't good, I just see him he's not doing well. He's doing not good things, immoral things. He's getting down the wrong path, etc., etc., etc. So I think a lot of people would say, you should do something about it, right? But what about not minding my own business? I don't know. Do you agree?
I think if it's a person who stands close to you,
Good.
with whom you are a good relationship or close relationship, I think you're doing good to the person if you're telling them not to do what they're doing. But if it's a complete stranger, then it would come across a little bit awkward.
Right.
If you're just
Butting into my business. Mind your own business and stay out of my life.
So I think it depends on what level of relationship you have with the person.
Okay, absolutely. So I think there's definitely, it's accepted that at a level of personal contact, if someone's close to you, you can mix it. But a lot of the time, the truth is, why is it it's accepted? It's because that person is connected to you. So it's like, in a certain sense, it's about how they reflect. So again, it's the more close something is to you, the more you have a business in mixing in, kind of thing. If someone's hurting you, then you for sure have a business in stopping them hurting you. If society accepts that kind of hurting each other, but if it's someone, their own business completely, it has nothing to, if it's someone's close to me, so then again, this is my business because they're my family and they affect me, and ultimately their behavior in some way, they're my relatives. To kind of, even if you don't say it in that kind of way, it's not like it looks bad on me, but it's something it's very, his actions kind of affect, us as a family, whatever it is. I should speak to him. I've got like more, yeah, and sometimes it's just that the closeness which gives you the ability to do it, because it doesn't feel like you're meddling in someone else's business. You're able to have that close conversation. It's not just a complete stranger, right? That's how it works, I would say, at a secular standpoint. Why? We're all individuals. We ultimately are living our own separate lives, and we're minding our own business. And when that clash comes and your business affects my business, that's when we need to step in. But if your business remains in your corner and you're not doing, and what you're doing affects your life and doesn't affect my life, etc., then you go about doing what you're doing, and I don't really have responsibility to you and to your actions to try in any way kind of feel responsible to what your personal decisions are, or even decisions about things that are happening in your life which don't have anything to do with me. It's your business. Yeah? The Medrash gives us an example and tells us, no. You could all imagine this guy is drilling a hole in he says, it's my compartment. I'm drilling a hole in my compartment. What are you mixing in for? It's my room. Don't tell me what to do. So let's take a look at the Rambam. Just brings out the idea, and he really brings it. The Maimonides, text 4. Can you read?
We should always consider ourselves and the entire world as equally balanced between merit and guilt. If we perform one transgression, we may tip our personal balance and that of the entire world to the side of guilt, and we bring destruction upon everyone. Conversely, if we perform one mitzvah, we may tip our balance and that of the entire world to the side of merit, bringing deliverance and salvation to all. This dynamic is reflected in the verse, a righteous person is the foundation of the world, meaning that a person who acts righteously tips the balance of the entire world and saves it.
Okay. So this is interesting. The Maimonides is telling us that one action has universal ramifications. Always view your one action as not just affecting you, as affecting everyone. Your one thing can tip the scale to the good for the whole world and tip the scale to the negative for the whole world. Why? Because Judaism views our collective experience as we're connected. We have responsibility for each other, and my actions affect everyone, like the boat. If I'm going to dig my head and say it's my cabin, well, if we're all on the same boat, right, then who cares that it's your cabin? You're going to affect the fate of everyone on that boat. And since Judaism views us as we are all about the same ship, we all have a mission. We've been put on this world for a collective purpose of making this world a place which is a better place, a place where God can feel comfortable, a place which is a more holy, ethical, pure place. That's the collective mission. So then if one person is going to be doing something against that, so then that impacts everyone. It's not just that individual. There's a collective experience, a collective ramifications as a result of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But in order
Good.
for you to intervene in someone else's life,
Good.
you both need to be on the same page.
Okay.
He should share the same collective responsibility that you feel.
Okay. So we're talking about Torah's view about what's your duty towards someone else. Now, if someone else is not in line with Torah's vision, they don't. But you, as someone who's coming to things with Jewish values, what do you find? I'm a little hot. Anyone mind if I open the window?
No.
Anyone mind if I open the window? No?
That's fine.
That's the bubble machine. If I'm approaching things I'm looking at Torah and I'm saying, what does Judaism tell me about my responsibility towards someone else? Now, again, you're absolutely right. Not everyone looks at it the same way. But me, in looking at it from a Jewish perspective and looking at what's my responsibility towards others, then I've got a responsibility. Yes, they might, and I can, and ultimately, every person makes their own decisions. That's absolutely true. But there is a concept that other people do affecting that as a fact, right? And so we're on the same boat. There's the roadmap, which is, let's say, the Torah, which guides us on how to navigate this mission, which is called, which is the boat that we're all on to the mission of life, and each one's actions affect the other. Okay, that's one level of understanding of the mutual responsibility that the Torah describes us. We're all on the same boat. Now, it goes further than that. It goes deeper than that. Because this concept, look, we're looking at page 87. This concept is called Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Lazeh. If you've heard that phrase before, all Jews are Arevim. It's often described as responsible, guarantors one for each other. But remember, if you're a guarantor, you're still two independent people, just on one boat and with one mission, and therefore your thing is going to affect yours. If I don't pay the debt to you, so that's going to affect Hannah. That's a guarantor, right? But the truth is, this term Arevim, all Jews are Arevim, Zelazeh has a much deeper explanation, and the mystics tell us actually comes from the word Arevim. Jews are intermingled. They're, or more correctly, you would say, is the term commingled, which means that we actually are one whole, and we're each a part of each other. So it means that another Jew is not just someone outside of myself, and his actions, and it's my actions, and there's this big mission. No, he's actually a part of me. What does that mean? Let's read it a little bit more clearer. So this is from the Ramak, the Ramosha Cordovero, who is one of the famous Kabbalists. Amy, do you have your book you want to read? You're up for it? From Lubov?
Hi, Rabbi. Sorry, I don't have my book right at the moment. Apologies.
No worries, no worries. Lubov, are you up for it? You said you were on the road. Okay, I'll read. Okay. All Jews are interrelated because our souls are commingled and we share a part of each other's soul. This is why all Jews bear mutual responsibility. We each possess an actual spiritual part of our fellow. As a result, when one Jew transgresses, their actions cause damage to themselves and inflict damage to the part of them that is shared by their fellow Jews. Therefore, we should all seek out each other's benefits, rejoice in each other's successes, and respect our fellow Jew as we respect ourselves, because we really are one. This is basis for the commandment to love your fellow as yourself, which is a mitzvah in the Torah. So this is a fascinating idea. This means that when you are doing something, not only are you affecting someone else because you're actually affecting someone else because that other person shares part of your identity. He's one with you. And if you're going to, just to give an example of a body, if you're going to stub your toe, what's going to feel the pain of stubbing your toe? The whole body feels the pain of stubbing your toe. It's not just the toe feels how toe hurts. If you're one unit and your souls are interrelated and one soul is arev, is ta'uvav, is murav, is mixed in, that means that you're actually, you're bound together. You're united at a soul level, and therefore you're actually, whatever it is that you're not good up to, it's actually affecting the other person in a deep, very personal way. It's a much deeper kind of idea than the first thing. It's not just we're separate, we're actually one. So it turns out that according to this, it's not that we don't just have a common interest and therefore we should kind of we have to be responsible of each other because we have a common interest to achieve this goal. No, we have a common identity. If we have a common identity, then that affects me personally. It's not just that our goal is not going to be achieved. It's that it affects me personally. It affects me in a deep way because another person is deeply intermingled with who I am and my identity altogether. Okay. Now again, we're using all terms of Jewish because we're talking from a Jewish law standpoint, but this doesn't mean necessarily this doesn't apply to humankind as a whole. Now, so what we've laid out so far, mutual responsibility in Judaism, it turns out it goes back right at the beginning. In terms of when we accepted our mandate as being the Jewish people, now 7 Ishma, we took upon ourselves, or along with Judaism comes that mutual responsibility. We are mutually responsible for each other. And that breaks down into two. Looking at it from the one end and is that we're all on the same boat, and therefore your actions affect the mission as a whole, and therefore affect me. But we're separate people, and looking from a deeper mystical place, it's actually more than that. You and me are mixed into each other. We are bound, and therefore who you are and your behavior deeply is connected to who I am and my identity at a soul level. So if you're going to hurt yourself, it's going to hurt me too. And if you're going to do wonderful things, it's going to also do wonderful things for me too. But just an idea. Now, sounds radical? No? Hannah?
I think it depends on the situation.
Okay, the question is how this plays out.
Yeah, so you could tell us a few examples. So how should you this and this situation? But in general, it sounds of course great.
Okay, sounds great. Luba and Amy, any thoughts? Guys, I love the Zoom. I go crazy with Zoom. So that's why I always say if people can make it in person, but thank God for Zoom. We have options. Before the pandemic, who dreamed of this, right? Because either you can make it or you couldn't make it. Now suddenly it's like, Amy, anything you want to add? Amy?
It was just breaking up a little bit there, Rabbi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. Amy?
Can you hear me? I couldn't quite make it out. Yes, it's better now.
Is the connection decent
Rabbi?
altogether, or it's in general a bit choppy?
It's been good up until just this second. Do you mind to just repeat? I heard you were saying like, if someone does good, it's good, good for everybody. Likewise on the other side. And then you were asking the question, but I didn't quite make it out.
Okay, the question was if it sounds radical and if you had any thoughts or any qualms with this kind of approach. Or any difficulty accepting it? Or any feedback, any?
Sure. Difficulty accepting feedback?
No, difficulty accepting this concept. Or it's intuitive for you.
Oh, no, it's intuitive to me. I mean, it is complicated, but I think it's about the community, isn't it?
Right.
We have to support each other.
Okay. So you're saying that we have a responsibility as a community towards each other, yeah. So here we're saying, yeah, one aspect is definitely the first aspect sounds like a community idea more, where we're kind of all in the same boat and we have a joint mission and purpose. So that's the second idea was even deeper than that, where our identity is bound up with the other person's identity. So therefore, each person's actions directly affect me, not just as a common, we have common interest and therefore we actually at a deep personal kind of way they affect it, because you and me are very actually bound up and one at a soul level. So going to the core of who we are, we have a deep connection. So much so that we're like the example of one body where, you know, there's different parts of the body, absolutely, but they're all ultimately one body, and one thing affects the next in a deep way. Yeah. Okay. So let's take a look at just let's take a look how this plays out. Okay. They tell the story about this guy who comes to the job interview, and he said they're looking for someone responsible to take the job. So, you know, they want someone who's responsible. So he says, I'm the guy. He said, every time in my last job, every time something went wrong, they said, you're responsible. He said, I'm the guy that you want. Okay, what's this responsibility? How does it actually play out? Now, this is going, we're now going to reference back to our 3 case studies that we opened with tonight. Okay, and let's look at how it plays out in a practical way. So first of all, when it comes down to our responsibility to each other, it's going to play out in 2 ways. In Jewish understanding, we have the responsibility to each other's material well-being and also to each other's spiritual well-being. Okay, now material well-being in terms of giving charity, you know, poor people, it's your duty to make sure that they have what they eat, and therefore Judaism speaks about things like mutual responsibility, giving charity as a law in Torah law. That's something you have to do. That's actually something that Judaism introduced to the world, by the way. Historians will tell you that a lot of those ethics are actually straight from the Torah in Judaism, and they today are accepted secular values as well. Then what we're going to focus on today is much more about the duty to protect each other from harm. How far does that responsibility go? What's that mutual responsibility? How does it play out? Okay. So on page 88, you have text 6a. It says, "Do not stand by the shedding of your fellow's blood." Okay. Now, Maimonides gives us the details of what that means. Text 6b, page 88, goes like this. "This prohibition forbids us to refrain from intervening to save others when we see they are in danger of death or financial loss, and we have the ability to rescue them. For example, if someone is drowning in the sea and we are able to swim out and save him, or if robbers are planning to kill someone and we were able to dissuade the plotters or protect the victim from harm, regarding all such cases, we are commanded to not stand by the shedding of your fellow's blood." So Maimonides is giving us the scope of the Torah's law. Don't stand by and be a passive observer. You have a duty in the Torah, a legal responsibility in the Torah. Remember, when we're talking about legal responsibility in the Torah, we're talking about a society, the court, the Jewish court, which was the Bet Din, would be able to hold someone responsible for these things. Now, he gives 2 examples. The first example is someone's in mortal danger, right? The guy is drowning in sea. He's in mortal danger, and you have a duty to go out, swim, and save him. Okay? Mutual is responsible. Do you think such a law exists in the UK? If someone is drowning, can you just walk by and say, "I'm sitting on the beach, you can drown"? Doesn't know how to swim. I know how to swim. It's not very difficult for me, guys. It's not like a dangerous current. I don't have to worry about me raging. Literally, or someone falls into a hole and I walk past and the guy's like, "Help, help." Do I have to help him? Do you think the UK has such a law that you have to help?
There might not be a law, but it's just, it would be immoral not to do
It would be
so.
immoral. So legally, you're saying there would be no law. You can't be held responsible from a legal standpoint. You're right. In the UK, in some countries, there's a concept which is called a duty to rescue. But let's say in Germany, in France, there's a law like that. In Israel, there's a law like that, which is actually called Lo Tamod al Dam Re'echa. It's the law 6a. In the UK, there's no such law. And I don't know about Hungary.
In Hungary, if you see a car accident,
Right.
you're legally obliged to call 911.
Oh, you are?
police. But I
Okay.
haven't seen anyone being fined for nothing sort of thing. Because I think people are doing this out of morality and because of law. But then there's an accident on the side of the street and hundreds of cars are passing by. You can't fine everyone one by one for not calling 911. It should be only one person, right?
Yeah, the practical application.
Yes, there are practical application, but in theory, at least when I was passing my driving license, they said that it's the legal requirement to call ambulance if you see an accident on the street.
So it's interesting. So it sounds like there is such a law. Yeah, how far that goes is interesting. How it actually plays out. But it's interesting to think that in some countries there's not even a law. There's a law called the Good Samaritan law. You heard of it? So that's a different thing. Which is, you've ever heard of Good Samaritan? You know what that is?
No.
That's I think it's a Christian idea. The Good Samaritans from the Bible. Basically, he's any person if you go and you do help, so there's a legal protection for the guy who went and helped. For example, can he be sued if something didn't go out exactly? Yeah. So there's laws protecting the Good Samaritan that he cannot be held responsible in certain things. But is there a duty altogether to go and duty to rescue, for example? Do you have to? Mortal danger, do you have to step in? A lot of countries say no, you don't have to. There's no legal requirement. Morally, absolutely moral. Okay. But the second example of Maimonides is actually taking it a step further. The guy is not in mortal danger. What's the case in the step of Maimonides? Robbers are planning to kill someone. We are able to dissuade the plotters or protect the victim from harm. Has anything happened yet? Nothing's happened yet. But you're able to prevent something from happening. That's a step further. No, in no country does such a law exist. You don't have to step in. Now, moral imperative, yes. But do you have to? No. And the reason that secular law is very wary of putting legal requirements of this kind in place. They're worried. Why would you think? Why do you think a secular society would be afraid to obligate people to stop someone from he knows someone's going to rob a bank, and it doesn't require him legally to have to call up and to inform the police about that, or someone's going to shoot up a church?
Maybe because in many cases you can't enforce this rule.
Okay, so that is practically, it's very hard to really know is it how hard. Yeah, there's definitely an element of that. But also think about a little bit the kind of society that it easily can lead to. A lot of times that could be a gateway to like a style, a government style, totalitarian government style, which makes everyone have to be informants on other people and makes it, if you're not going to inform about, like, think of just communist Russia. You know what I mean? If you didn't go and inform about what someone else was doing, then you could be, and that doesn't exactly, that's kind of opening up not such pleasant things. So they kind of stay away from that. They're a little bit, and ultimately, secular society is based on, like we spoke about in lesson number 1, it's based on really a lot more about all secular law is about what people are doing. That's what creates criminal act. But if someone's not doing, they don't want to get involved and say that if you don't do something, that's you're going to be held responsible for not doing. They They stay away from that. Why? Because doing impacts someone else. And society, secular law is there to protect each other, people from each other, kind of thing, to create a society that functions. But is it into doing the right thing? Is that what secular law is looking to promote? Not necessarily. Looking to promote a functioning society, that people aren't harming each other, people aren't getting in each other's way. So is it the right thing to do? It might be the right thing to do, but that's not what secular law is based on. It's based on a lot more about, are you hurting someone else? If you're not hurting someone else, you just kind of, we're not going to get involved, so to speak. So if we're going to take this back to Jewish law, how does it play out in Jewish law? In Jewish law, first of all, you have to do everything to avoid loss of life. Everything to avoid loss of life. Second of all, is we do have Jewish law is based on the concept of doing the right thing at a level of law, at a level of obligation. It's not considered morally nice. No, in Judaism, you have to. Have to means you're committing a crime. Well, if you had a Beth Din was able to penalize you, they would penalize you. Otherwise, you're committing a crime, against God and the Torah, which is still a crime. And you are legally obligated to prevent someone from being harmed. It's a legal responsibility. That's the difference. You're not talking about, it's not a moral imperative. The equivalent would be the UK saying you have to pick up that phone. If you don't pick up that phone to call the police when you know someone is about to go and hurt other people, you can be locked up in jail for it. The Torah says that's what it is. You are not allowed to stand by and watch another person get harmed. You have that legal responsibility to jump in. Okay? Now, looking at that, getting back to our case study number 8, where John Meek, John, what was his first name? I forgot his first name. Meek, he was a bit meek, the guy. Joseph. Okay. Joseph Meek. So what do you think Torah would say about that case? Absolutely. Absolutely liable. You should be a Beth Din would. There's no set punishment in the Torah for such a thing. Meaning, say, but a court, a Beth Din would decide this person. It's not really a concept of jail. The Torah is not into jail, but a person could definitely be punished for such a lack of behavior. You have a responsibility, an obligation. It's not just a moral imperative. It's not just a nice thing to do. You have an absolute obligation not to stand by. Now, let's look at it even further. If you notice, Maimonides says, not only do you have a moral obligation to protect a person from physical harm, also from monetary loss. Did you notice that?
Yes, it's pretty interesting. So in the second case study, when you see the case one,
okay.
you would also be
So let's see, but it's a little bit more complicated. So let's take a look at text 8, page 90. Lubov, if you're up to reading, otherwise we will be with Hannah.
Yes, I can read. It's page
90.
90. Yes. Sorry. Yes. My cat also wants to read. Rava taught. The verse states, is it the right text?
Yeah, you're doing good.
Rava taught. The verse states, so must you do with anything belonging to your fellow. The mention of anything comes to include preventing damage to someone else's property. Rabbi Hanayaha, is it correct?
Ananya, yeah?
Ananya said to Rava, there is an earlier teaching that supports your ruling. If you observe food water advancing toward your fellow's field, you must erect a barrier to protect the field.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, go. You had a question?
No, I stop, right? Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
So here the Talmud is commenting, the verse says, you've got a responsibility to return a lost item to someone who lost something. Okay, property, you need to restore it. But the Torah goes further and seems to describe that as being a broader requirement. And the Talmud elaborates, what is that broader requirement? You have a requirement to prevent loss also. It's not only it's also, and not only post, it's also pre. You have to do preventative actions that a person should not lose money. And for example, if you see floodwater advancing, you've got a responsibility to go and erect a barrier to protect that field, right? Yeah. Now, the question is, how far do you need to go with that? How far do you go with having to save a person from incurring financial loss? That could be pretty extensive. So do I need to go if see a guy who locked up his bike on the street, who left his bike on the street and he didn't lock up his bike? I need to go buy a lock and lock up his bike so that someone shouldn't steal his bike. There's enormous. Do I need to start sending money to go and prevent another person from losing money? So I should spend money? How does that work? So we in the halacha guides us through it. And the Torah's obligation, when it comes to saving a life, absolutely. You spend as much money as it needs in order to save a life. Yes, the person who's been saved, it's their duty to compensate you on that expense. So if someone has a hiker's lost in the mountain, you have an obligation to do what you can to save that person. Charter a helicopter, get them, try save that person, do whatever you can. If you save that person, that person has the duty to compensate you on. They have to compensate you. They can't say, oh, but I didn't ask you to save me. You didn't have to. No, they have to compensate you. Question is now about this. The guy can say, well, I don't care about this thing, Do you have to put money in it? Don't you have to put money? So let's take a look. So it turns out, I won't read text 9, but basically text 9 lays out for you that you always have your financial loss always takes precedence over someone else's financial loss, which means to say like this, you are not obligated to lose money in order to save someone else from losing money. In Torah law, that doesn't exist. So even the people you have the utmost respect for, you don't have to go spend money in order to avoid them losing money. We just look at the last paragraph, which I'll look in text 9. So you're page 91, last paragraph. However, Rabbi Yehuda, you see that? However, Rabbi Yehuda quoted a warning issued by Rabbi. People who are strict in their application of this principle will eventually meet the impoverished state they're seeking to avoid. Rabbi Yehuda says, even though you don't have to spend money, sometimes you should even go beyond the letter of the law and go ahead and spend. So let's break it down like this. If I have an opportunity to save, well, that's an example of someone's going to have a financial loss. We actually just had, I don't know if you remember the big rains in we're seeing Lubov. The big rains, we had terrible flash floods in London about a year or 2 years ago, remember? So a lot of people got terrible. A lot of people in the basement flats got wiped out.
Yeah, a year ago.
It was a year ago, right? So we had, literally, it was a miracle. Honestly, it was a miracle. We had a week before, our drains were backing up. Suddenly backing up, it was emptying, it was going all the way up, backing up into the yard. and it wasn't going down. It was like literally a puddle of water. We called the management agency, get someone here right away. It was horrible. It was disgusting because you had to get drains back now. They sent someone right away, clean the drains. The guy goes into our garage, he says, you know that the whole street backs up is draining through you, means that we're like the final thing on the street. And he says, I don't know, but basically the drains are blocked from the whole street. He clears the thing. A week later, these flash floods. And I can promise you that if we hadn't had this guy clearing things, we would have all, because a lot of the news they were like on paddle boats, they were street down. Honestly, and it was a miracle. I don't understand. I'm saying it was tremendous. It was because the flood damage is terrible. People like literally had damage up to here. We were very, very lucky. But I was thinking, okay, amazing. And thank God we were able to save everyone from really their WhatsApp calls. You ever do WhatsApp on the computer? No? Very good. Even these days, you can even call on your computer. You don't even have to have your phone. You just use your computer.
Once you see other alternatives, you understand that WhatsApp is not very good.
It's not so good. Okay, so yeah, there we are. Let's say we would have paid for this situation and we were clearing everyone's drains, right? So, and it turns out we saved everyone from financial loss. Do we have, okay, this obviously was our house also, etc. But if I see someone's house is going to be, someone has a blocked drain, do I have to go and unblock their drain for them and then turn around and say, unblock your drain, pay me? So the answer is no. You don't have to put out money for someone else's to guarantee them not having a financial loss. Okay? Yes, we saw Rabbi Yehuda said, it's a nice thing to do. It's beyond the letter of the law. You should do that. And yeah?
Yeah, but that brings me back to my lesson 201.
Good.
When we talked about, you gave an example of someone involved in a Ponzi scheme.
Good.
And go.
Lyubov, it's Amy here. Did it stop? It stopped for you too as well, right? I see you're muted. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I cannot see or hear
Yeah.
anything.
It just stopped all of a sudden.
You can't see?
Oh, yes, yes.
now
Now we can.
you're
Now
back.
we can.
Sorry,
Yes.
we thought we
I don't know,
lost you.
suddenly it cut out, but we're back on, it looks like.
Told you what.
Thank you.
Now, yes. Now you're back.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
You think it cut out? You think? Wow, interesting, maybe. I'm going to shut off WhatsApp, that's it.
Yeah.
Over. There's a whole anti-WhatsApp campaign, no? There's like a, yeah, you're part of it?
I'm anti-Facebook. That's part of it.
Okay. Meta. These days we don't call it. It's funny because they renamed themselves Meta. In Hebrew, Meta means death, basically. It's like a terrible name in Hebrew. Anyways, so I would say the difference to answer your question is that was, first of all, we said we don't obligate people not to accept the money back. It was encouraged behavior. And part of that was we're encouraging behavior so the person should want to mend their ways. And if he's going to have to turn around and have to pay out everyone, then there's no encouragement on his part to want to mend his ways because it's too enormous. He's just going to become a pauper kind of thing. So therefore we say, you know what, in order to encourage him to be able to get on the right track, hold
I
back.
agree, but the result is that I'm losing money so that you wouldn't
Right, okay, but this is just a normal situation. The guy's gonna, if I didn't see this at all, he's always gonna lose the money. Question is, do I need to go ahead and pay money so that he shouldn't lose money? And the answer is no, you don't. It's an interesting thing, because sometimes it could be, let's say just the example of the drains. How expensive would it be already to get someone to clear a drain? £300. Damage is enormous. You can talk about tens of thousands of pounds. Nonetheless, because the damage that the money that I'm putting now is an objective thing. I know how much I'm putting, and the loss, you know, how much the person values the thing I'm protecting is ultimately his. It's their subjective relationship with whatever that thing is. I don't have to put out the money. That's the halacha. I don't have to put out the money to do it. Let's just qualify that one drop. If I know I'll be compensated, I am expected to put out the money. But if I don't know if I'll be compensated, I am not expected to bear a financial loss in order to save someone else's property. Okay, that's really the crux of it. However, there's a big however now. The however goes like this. Let's take a look at text 10. Nathaniel, where are we up to? I forget where we're up to. Who are we up to? Anna?
I think it's
Yeah.
Anna.
Text 10, page 92. Go for it.
If we encounter lost items of insignificant value to the point that if they were our own, we would not bother to collect them and take them home, we are nevertheless obliged to make the necessary effort to restore them to their owner. The rationale is that we have the right to relinquish our possessions if their value is outweighed by the physical burden they impose. However, we have no right to unilaterally relinquish someone else's ownership over their possessions. The Torah does not allow us to spare any effort, even if the effort is great and the value of the item is minimal.
Okay. So that's the big difference. Effort, you have to go put in all the effort. Financial, you have to bear a financial loss. So in order, when it comes to our responsibility to another person's bearing a financial loss, we are expected to put in all the effort so that another person should not bear a financial loss. That's the Torah value of how the mutual responsibility works vis-a-vis another person and them bearing a financial loss. We have that responsibility. I'm obligated to go. Would Rachel have to try to figure out who is the owner of the shop so she could tell this guy to turn off his air conditioner? Yes, it's effort. It might not be comfortable, might not be pleasant, but she is obligated from a Torah standpoint. It's not just a nice thing to do. It's not even that more. She's obligated, Torah standpoint, to say, you need to. Rachel, go find out who that owner is so you can make sure that they get their air conditioner. Because if it would be now having to pay someone to take her to the owner's house that's already paying money, no, you're not expected to actually lay out and fork out money to do something. You don't know how much, it doesn't make, but if it's just a question of effort, yes, you have to put in all the effort to save someone financial loss. Okay, interesting.
And what if there's a situation where you can't decide if the other person did something deliberately, but you think that it's going to be financial loss? For example, if you go on a holiday and you leave your lights on because you want the robber to think that you're at home,
everyone does
we can call your neighbor that, hey, you left your lights on. Shall I go into your house, or shall I borrow a key from someone?
Okay.
Because in that case, you would bother the other person by calling them.
You're absolutely right. So yeah, so I guess it would be interesting to look into the finer details of exactly, but my assumption would be if it's clear that a financial loss is coming, this is when this is all applied. It's clear that this person is bearing a financial loss. It's clear that in this case of Rachel, this person, you go past the shop every day, the air conditioner's off. Today, the air conditioner's on. There's no reason for it, etc., etc. It looks like the guy's losing, just forgot to turn off his air conditioner. Okay, I should go and try telling him his air conditioner's on. But if there's, if there's a real doubt, then this wouldn't apply. I don't need to go because on the odd chance that he's losing his money. No. If it's clear that there's going to be a real financial loss here, and I can prevent him from incurring that financial loss, I need to put in all the effort to try saving from it. If I'm sure I'm going to even be paid back, I need to put in money. If I'm not sure about that, then I don't have to put in money. Clear? Okay. So far we got moral responsibility to stand up to save another person's life, to prevent bodily harm, material harm at an extreme level. In the case of crime, bodily harm. In the case of monetary harm. And now we're going to look at the next thing, that's spiritual responsibility, which seemed to be the most difficult one to look at. Now, that takes us to page 94, text 12. There's a verse in the Torah which tells us like this: you shall surely critique your fellow and you will not share in their guilt, which basically means that I have a duty to critique, to prevent another person from sinning. And if they don't listen to me, it's not my problem. But it's my duty to, let's look at Maimonides, we'll get clearer. Text 13. One should not say, I will act righteously. And if others choose to stray from the path of righteousness, that is a matter that is between them and God. This attitude is antithetical to Torah values. Rather, we are commanded to do the right thing ourselves and to see to it that others too conduct themselves appropriately. Very succinct, very powerful. You have a Torah obligation based on this concept of avut, based on this concept of mutual responsibility to another person's conduct. To that another person shouldn't do the wrong thing. Now, typical thing is, what do you mean? It's not your business. No. Like we saw before, in Torah understanding, it is our business. Either it's because we have a shared mission, or it's because we are bound at a soul level, but it is our business. Another person's conduct, which is not in line with the right Torah values, is our business. And we need to try what we can to encourage people to do the right thing. Now, how is that done exactly? So Maimonides takes us through it. And he takes us through how to critique, text 14. And he takes us through it. Basically, what it comes out is, when it comes to this mitzvah of tochacha, it's not about the way to critique another person is because it's going to hurt us, and therefore I'm going to critique him because I want to be saved from the pain of, or like, and therefore I want to stop him. No, it's not about that. And it's not either from about a place of, like, oh, I'm so religious and you're not so religious, so let me tell you how this is done. Kind of a place of, not either. It's not even from a place, the way a person's supposed to critique is not from a place, the Torah told me I'm supposed to go to critique, so I need to check that check spot. And I'm going to, no. What's it about? It's about, I'm motivated from a place of genuine care for another person. I know that person is doing something which is harming himself at a spiritual place. I know that person is doing something which is really not healthy from him from a spiritual angle. And I care about him and I want him to have the best. And I appreciate what that's about. And the general rule is that we always say in Torah tells us, words that exit the heart enter the heart. When you say something and they come from your heart, they will penetrate someone else's heart. That's the approach to this instruction. You've got a duty to critique, and someone who you see is doing wrong conduct, that's based on this concept of our book, we have a mutual responsibility for their conduct. It is your business. Don't say it's not your business, it's your business. Got to do it in the right way. It's got to be motivated by genuine care. It's not motivated by the fact that, oh, he's doing this. No, But if it's motivated by genuine care and it's coming from the right place, chances are you might even get somewhere with it. You might actually get him to think about maybe he is doing the wrong thing. Okay, are you responsible if he doesn't? No, that's his. Ultimately, it's his problem. But you have a duty to try to get him to the right path.
So am I responsible if I didn't do anything?
What?
You're saying if I'm responsible if he didn't listen to me?
If he didn't listen, you
I'm
didn't.
not responsible.
You're not responsible.
Am I responsible if I didn't do anything?
Yes, you're absolutely. You have an obligation in Torah to see if you see someone doing something wrong, to tell them off. Tell them off in the right way. But yes, you have an obligation. Okay. Now, exactly how you're going to tell them off, obviously, if it's a situation that needs to be referred to the police, then you'll go to the police. If it's a situation that needs to, someone's doing something wrong and you need to refer them to a mental health professional because they're struggling, then it's your responsibility to take them. It's actually an obligation to do that. And if it's if it's something that you need to have a private conversation and a heart-to-heart with that person, then that's where you should go for the coffee. But how it plays out exactly, what's going to be, it's not about, oh, I'm going to go, like that situation we're describing secular society, that everyone's turning into rats on each other, which is a terrible concept. It's not about that at all. It's about genuine care for the other person, and therefore, how are you going to tell them off? You're talking about a very different situation. Following? Yeah? Okay. Now that's all. That's all. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You're saying I'm responsible for not interfering really with someone else, not telling him off. But
Let me just clarify. You have the responsibility. If you see someone doing something wrong, he's doing something, an action which is harmful, which is the wrong thing within his own self, you have a responsibility to interfere. Yeah.
I'm talking about spiritually.
Right.
If he, for example, I see someone doesn't eat kosher, right?
Yeah.
So I'm obligated to tell him off in appropriate way, of course. Why? Because we share collective responsibility. I don't think it's fair that I will be responsible individually because I am obligated to do that because of the collective responsibility. So the result should be that we are all collectively responsible.
Sorry.
If I didn't do anything,
No.
I cannot be held responsible individually.
Can't be held responsible for what?
For not telling him off.
Good.
Right? I cannot be held responsible individually because this
So
obligation comes from collective responsibility, not individual responsibility.
So it's like, imagine, I think, let's just to bring this home, imagine you had a son, God forbid, a father, a very close family member who was really not in a good way. They're starting to get in the wrong crowds, they're starting to get involved in drugs, and he did nothing about it. Mm-hmm. It's easy to understand that in such a case, you have a responsibility. You can almost be held responsible for the fact you didn't step in. That's your lapse of responsibility.
Yes.
In a little bit of a sense,
but not alone.
Not alone, right? But in doing, and the key is if you have the power to prevent it. If I know some guy, if I have a power to prevent it, if I am a close friend of yours, and I see Nathaniel, what's going on? Your behavior is not moral. You're doing the wrong things. What's going on? And I can talk to you, and that can actually, I can prevent it through my interference. If there's a possibility of that, then I am obligated to interfere. If our relationship is not that place, or we have no, then I'm not going to prevent it. There's no, I'm not going to shout to the top, oh, stop sinning. That's stupidity. Who's going to listen to you? You're just going to be a loony. It's not what it's about. It's about I have a responsibility to someone else's behavior if I'm able to help them prevent it. It's his behavior, it's his choice. But if I'm able to help them prevent it, I have that responsibility. It's not just his, yeah. Amy.
I had a different question or hypothetical example. So is this just towards Jews or just humankind in general?
So we're talking about, we're generally speaking about, because it's Jewish law, we're talking about Jewish people, but yes, this does apply to mankind as a whole. Let's say when it comes to, there's the 7 Noahide laws, which are, which God gave to all people. And there's a concept that every person is responsible to the other, that they should uphold the 7 Noahide laws. Based on this concept of mutual responsibility, even at a level of conduct.
I guess the question that I wanted to ask you was one that I experienced maybe a year ago, where I was on the tube and I don't know, you see a parent kind of like parent was pretty aggressive with the child, but also kind of like basically saying to anybody, you tell me what to do, I'll, start a fight with you. Like quite menacing. So I just personally, it's hard. It's like, it's upsetting, but you don't know what to do, right? So I'm just kind of curious, like, what does one do? Is it to do the action or to just preserve one's safety? I'm not really sure.
So it's a good question. And that would maybe a little bit going into the question of, do you need to risk yourself for someone else? In that situation, I would say not risk yourself, but again, we're talking about mutual responsibility. If you can actually achieve something. So if you're going to go and deal with confront the parent head on, it sounded like that might not have been productive. But if there is some kind of way that a person can, I don't know, in that kind of case, have some kind of follow-up where, try to discover who these people are, maybe get social services just to check up that things are okay. Or, if you can alert maybe a member of that sense, what we're talking about, the Jewish value is a sense of a responsibility. There's a mutual responsibility. This course, we've been looking at all these Jewish values, which are really underpinning all these Torah obligations, these Torah perspectives. The idea that I just look the other way, and I know there's these terrible situations where you see they've showed how like people have died on the tube or on the subway, and like literally people just carry on their lives, and this guy is dying on the subway. He'll get in and off and in and off, and it's insane, and it's really sad because in a sense that's an outcome of a society where everyone's, it's not my business, I don't want to get it, and Torah is the exact opposite, where Torah says, no, it is your business and you have an obligation. And obviously it's about how you go about that obligation, et cetera, et cetera. But that's an incredibly different way of looking at the whole picture. Yeah. So I don't know if that gives you a clear definitive answer, but the general approach to the question of, if I see something like that's happening and I can do something to try help, I can really do something which can maybe help to prevent what's going on, then yes, that's Judaism would say you have there's a concept of mutual responsibility. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So let's just wrap up, and I'm going to just show you let's wrap up actually with the lesson video, because the truth is this is something where it plays out in interesting ways, this idea of us being responsible, but it's not only from a place of responsibility, it's also from a place of care and genuine concern for each other and love for each other, because the more you realize you're connected, the more you care about each other. And that takes us to a place where we've been speaking about preventing. We shouldn't just stand by if we see someone doing things wrong. What about encouraging people to do things right? And this is going back to the beginning where we looked at the Pew survey, where people are not engaged with their Jewish identity. They don't really know anything about it. They don't really have, should you try to encourage them? Now, I'm a Chabadnik. Chabad is absolutely, the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe was enormously motivated by this idea of every single Jew is someone who I care about. Every single Jew is someone who is my brother, and I want to do my best to help them, whether it be materially, whether it be spiritually. And if someone never had a chance to understand what Passover is, and I can invite them to join me at a Passover Seder and give them the chance to experience what their heritage is and give them a chance to cherish that, then absolutely you should do that. It's not about it's about, if you had your brother, your son, and you saw an investment opportunity, would you not go and say to them, you better invest there because in 10 years' time this is going to be worth who knows what? Ultimately, at a spiritual perspective, we've got an enormous inheritance. It's called the Torah. It's called one of the most glorious things which Judaism has got to offer. And there's so many Jews out there who, for one reason or another, never had the opportunity at all to even experience their tradition and their heritage whatsoever. The Rebbe said, go out there and give a people a chance to do that. Give a people a chance to experience that. Now, how do you do that? It's motivated by a love of a fellow man. Nothing else. Is not because you get points. It's not because that's all wrong attitude. And that's not what it's about. It's about being there for each other and looking out for each other. And it's a fascinating idea, which even plays out within Jewish law, where a person can actually say a blessing. Let's say I did a mitzvah. Okay? I already made Kiddush, for example. Kiddush is a mitzvah. Friday night to raise the glass of wine, sanctify Shabbat is a mitzvah. I said God's name. I'm done. And then another Jew walks into the room who hasn't yet heard Kiddush. So he needs to hear Kiddush. In Torah, you could actually, in halacha, you can make Kiddush again for that person. Hold on a second. I can make Kiddush again? I already fulfilled my obligation. He has not fulfilled his obligation. My understanding is because as long as he hasn't fulfilled his obligation, I can't, my obligation is not complete. I have a duty towards him to help him fulfill his obligation too. Now, the idea is it's not about, it's about so that's interesting how it plays at a halachic place. But I'm going to show you, let's share the video, because I think it just gives you a little insight into the Rebbe's feeling and how strongly he felt about mutual responsibility. So you guys on Zoom, I'm going to share here. And one sec. Trying to get we are now. Okay, we're there now. Keep points video. There we are. 3. Okay. You seeing what I'm seeing, you ladies, on Zoom? Ladies, Zoom, you here?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we see.
You see and you hear?
Yes.
Okay. So some of this is clips. Hold on, sorry. It's recordings you're hearing the Rebbe talking. And here, put this down so you guys can see too. See?
No, das meint mir a viele Aiden, was gefindt sich bekatzwe Tevel und ist sich mit dem keinmal nicht zusammengetroffen. Punkt als sich hat sich lieb, mit Dides und Agbolis, hat da sein der Ringen von Avas Israel auf der Zweiten. Und in was besteht hat die Jahre, ist in der Linie von Teire Mitzvah, sein Nechet alle Jiden, Arevin, Seba, sie können sein, der Limo der Teire Beschlemus und der Tima Mitzvah Beschlemus, Bishas Achelik von Nem, was Kol Israel, Kulam Yachad, ist Hakema Schleimo, ist der Chelik, Leisator, nicht Scholem Belimo der Teire, und nicht Scholem Bekima Mitzvah. Und das soll sein verbunden mit allen Jiden, wo sie sollen sich nicht gefunden.
Und wie mir sagt, dass bei Venezuela Arabim, Lazareno Arab, Anegele Peil, was jeder Tag gehen verloren. Nishomis von Bnei und Bnei Israel, was Chas V'Sholem sagen auf eine Schoma, auf eine Jiden, als ist im Ganzen verloren, aber verloren in dem Move. Amit darf mit dem Ton morgen aufbringen im Nenter zur Jüdischkeit, wird es darf ein Ton in mehrere Unionen und darf sie da wieder wird Ton kommen. Mit der Sache mehr Schwierigkeiten, wie viel das ist ein Inyan, Ikri, und ein Inyan Chiyuni, und ein Inyan von Pikuach Nefashis Mamosh, aber soll Reis nehmen, der Hero, und der Hero soll Reis in Meise bepeil. A jeder Nesef Avdru, was tut bei Momene. Nesef Avdru, was tut bei Nishmose, alle Dei, Lilmed und Lamed, soll Rechiton begufe, wann geht zu Afozas Ayadus, und bei Meise bepeil, gehen bepeil, Mamesh begufe, und reden bepeil, Mamesh befiv. Und bei Weisen nach lebendigem Beispiel Befehl Mamesh Beramach Evro, Beshasag Gida, was mit darf lernen in Teir und Mekayim sein ihre Mitzvahs, wo mal viele haben, Mekayim Nefesh Achas Misro, ist Echet Mekayim Kilo Kiyim Elo Mole, Alachas Kama Vekama Vimizetos Befehl, Abekeiche Shal Kol Echad Ve'achas, was nimmt auf sich gehen, Mefit sein Jadus. Zwischen Iden hat mich schön gesehen, aber seine haben Matzel gewähnt, wie Kammer eine Fosche ist, und Matzel gewähnt in Asami Nefen, wie gerät früher bei der Gehe, zu Meise Chio, die, wenn es haben Matzel gewähnt, seine dann noch geworden Maxilim, seine geworden Echet Maschpien, und Afghen und Masel sein Iden, was einander wohl zu sehen, gekonnt zukommen, mese zibische Tier.
Okay. Practice your Yiddish if you want. So yeah, just to finish the wrap up. It's an interesting thing, but it's also, when you start thinking about it, it makes so much sense. When we're not talking about when you have something you cherish and you value, and another person has it too, but they don't realize what they have. And you appreciate that this is something that can add a lot of value in their lives, and that's something that they would appreciate also really getting to know and getting, but for whatever reason, they've never had that experience and they had that opportunity. Are you going to just turn a blind eye and say, it's their, but it's not my business. Let's get them get on with their life and do whatever they want. And the Rebbe taught us that absolutely not. The Torah teaches us. The Rebbe really emphasized that, especially nowadays, where we're living in a world where Jews are tragically really not engaged with their Jewish identity. Do each of us have an opportunity to, if we're going to, to introduce to our fellow Jews something which is, hey guys, Judaism is pretty cool. Let's explore it. Maybe I'll tell you something I just learned. I don't know what, or invite them to something, to a Torah class. Or do we have that? Well, if we cared about people and we were genuinely, then the answer is, it's easier to say, I'll just watch my normal business. I'll live myself, my life. I love this way of life. It's beautiful. For me, it works. For you, you do whatever you want. You could do that, but to hold it back from even giving the other person a chance and an opportunity to engage in. Of course, we're not talking about shoving things down people's throats. We're talking about being motivated from a place of genuine care and concern, and that's what's motivating you. And also, it's if it's all those things, usually most people who as someone who very much feels that Chabad is done more for Jewish continuity and Jewish future than so many others in the world. And in terms of, as you know, there's a Pew study itself documented how many people aren't engaged with anything and they consider themselves having a connection with Chabad because they love this. It's not about holier than thou. It's not about it. It's about a pure, genuine desire to share something beautiful, which is called our Jewish heritage, which is, the oldest religion and the most, in terms of monotheistic religion. Here we are. We've got something awesome, guys. Discover. Let's chance, engage with it. Discover what it is. You don't like it? Okay, it's your choice. Everyone's got their own choices, but at least giving that opportunity, each of us, should we feel some responsibility? I believe we can. And can we make a difference? We can all make a difference in our own ways, in our own private ways. Obviously, we're all studying here because we are interested in what Judaism has to offer. But there's a lot of people who don't think that Judaism even has anything to offer because of how Judaism has been presented, whatever it is. They had a bad experience when they were 5, or their parents thought it was something. But should we not give that opportunity? And that's just as a interesting thing, which I think is counterintuitive a little bit, like, just mind your own business. What are you going to start telling people how to live their lives? It's not about telling people how to live their lives in a preachy way at all. But if it's someone you genuinely care about, are you going to try at least present something to them which might enhance their lives, and maybe say to them, yeah, this is something beautiful, take a look and explore? You'll almost be selfish not to, and it will be not true, genuine concern for someone else if you just ignored that fact. So that's the final step within Jewish mutual responsibility, mutual care for each other. And interesting, again, going back to our case studies, we discover it goes pretty far within the Jewish view of how far we should really be looking out for each other, and how each one of us really has a duty to the person next to them. Okay, next week, personal freedom, getting an understanding from the Jewish take on that, and we won't do the key points. Whoa, we went way over time. We started late, but I still didn't want to go as late as this. I apologize. But yeah, interesting discussion next week. So hope you enjoyed. Any questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap up. Anyone? No? Amy?
No, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah. My pleasure. Good seeing you. Have a wonderful night. Good night, Lubov.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
My pleasure.